we are in a spiritual church and we talk about spirituality because that's what we do in a spiritual church. But I wanted to talk about how each one of our journey during this enlightenment time, if we want to say it that way, comes across differently. The other day, something as I thought, oh, Lynn, you're doing really well and you're understanding things better and you're letting go of things and maybe finding a happier state of mind. Something happened and it kind of took me away from that again. And all I thought about at that moment, and I wrote it down quickly, was I do not walk a perfect path of spirituality. Neither do any of us. So of course we recognize that. But do we want to? We absolutely do, because we think when we walk, the path of spirituality and we stay on that path, that we'll be happy, we'll be healthier, and we'll get all of our wishes will come true. But obviously that's not the case. So a couple of weeks ago, Sharon and I were sitting together and I made a comment to her, and I remember everything. I'm like an elephant, never forgets. And I made a comment to her about, well, I'm in a much better state now regarding what we were talking about. And it was kind of a relationship, whatever. And she said, good, good. And I felt very proud of myself. I have let go of something that's not making me happy, that something's not bringing me into the space I want to be in. And that was great that day. I was really proud of myself. I was like, good, Lynn, good. Well, a couple of days later, something else happened, and it was sort of along the lines of the same thing we were talking about. And I was out of that state of mind. I was out of that feeling of balance and pride and everything else for letting go of something that does not serve me well. So, okay, I thought about that and I said to myself, what is wrong with you? What is wrong that 1 minute you can be in the best space that you want to be in, and then you slide back, like you never took those steps forward, you slide back. And Ken will, as I look at Ken's face, because I know I can see the registering of awareness on him, that not only do I go through that, but he goes through that, but he knows how to let it go better than I do. And I know how to just take it in and kind of let it suck the life out of me. So I have to say it that way. I'm sorry, it sounds harsh, but it's true. And I know we all go through that. I know we all go, and I'm looking at people, I know we all go through that. So it gets to the point of, what do we need to do? What do I need to do? What do any of us need to do to stay in not necessarily the best space all the time, but to recoup? And I started listening to some YouTube kind of talks from this woman that I just happened to find, and her name is Gabrielle Bernstein. And she talks about her life early on, where as a young person, she was finding spiritual moments with her mother as they traveled from ashram to ashram throughout New York. I believe, I'm trying to think, she was from Larchmont, New York, or something like that. So they did all the routes of the ashram. And she said at that time she was in a good space, but she was young. As years went on, she came into, I believe, an addiction, an alcohol addiction. I don't know if there was further addiction with drugs. I'm not sure about that. But she needed to find a way back to her spiritual self, and not just dabble in it like she had when she was younger, but find herself back in a better place so that she could live a healthier, happier life. And along the line, something hitting rock bottom made her say, okay, I need to examine this, and I need to find, how to live this better spiritual path. So she ended up, as years go on, and Pat was talking about balance before, and it's no coincidence that she had a couple of days ago mentioned what she might read, and I had been thinking about balance within this as well. And this young woman talked about how she had to find a balance in her life. And somewhere along the line, she's now 43 years of age, but she became an inspirational speaker. She became a yoga teacher. She is motivational. She does podcasts and she talks about how to find happiness in your life. This is nothing new to us. We are always looking for people who tell us how to find happiness. But again, sometimes when you listen to these things, it just leads you in a direction where it makes you think further on what you have to do. But it is about balance. I, just like you probably, I have two little people that sit on my shoulder, and I've mentioned this to you before. I have the very sweet, nice Lynn, who doesn't show up sometimes as much as she should. And I have the devil Lynn, who really isn't a devil, but boy, oh boy, if you do something that bothers me, I may not lash out at you, but I may internally feel like that little cat comes out. So I do have these two people. I think a lot of people do, but it's not where we want to be. We want to be where we can evaluate situations and say, okay, well, you know what? It's not the way I would do that, or it's not what I believe, but there's balance in life. And as much as I can be right, someone else can be right. I have to say that sometimes is difficult because we know how we grew up, we know how we live our adult life, and we see things in right and wrong sometimes, or we see things in the emotional, the heartfelt things or feelings that we don't want to let go of. That was important to us. So this young woman, Gabby, her name is Gabrielle Bernstein. She's doing a talk in English. And a woman says to her, because a woman has seen her podcast and she has seen her, YouTube specials and all these different things, and she's read her books and everything else, and says to her, Gabby, do you live in the light all the time? So if you're standing in front of a group and you're a motivational speaker, what are you supposed to say? What is the answer to that? And she said, basically, hell no, no way. She said, but it's not about living in the light all the time. It's about how fast you can get back there. And that, I think, is true, because I know there's no way with who I am that I am going to look at certain situations and say, okay, I'm enlightened. I know that's fine. I know that, but that person said is okay. I know the way that someone has interacted with me now is fine with me. It's not going to be fine with me. And probably none of that will be fine with you if somebody has infringed on what you believe to be true or what you believe to be your path. So when she said, no, I don't live in the light all the time, but I know how to get back there fast. And that made me feel very good to hear that, because basically with our spiritual lessons and our spiritual path, we're units, and we're not going to be in the light all the time. And we're not going to handle the situations the best possible way that we can handle it. But if we can not slide back all the time, or at least if we're going to slide back, let it not be like sliding so far back that coming so far forward is going to take us forever. It's about just knowing that you are not in the place you want to be at this point, but you can return to that place quicker than you did before. And I think that was very important for me to read, because it made me feel less conscious of my negative side and the way I handle things that isn't always with the highest and best good for me, or the highest and best good if you're thinking, about yourselves. There are times where I think, boy, if you know those cartoons where there's or the comic where there's the bubble coming out of the head. There are times with people in my circle, in my family, different situations where and I've said this before, if they could read the bubble that came out of my head, that really is in here. Because my mother used to have a saying, what's on your lung is on your tongue. And if you're the type of person who verbalizes the way I do, it could be a very quick trip from what's in here to what's out here. So I try to filter. Not only do I have a filter on what I say, but I try to have a filter on my brain and my thoughts, because I know if somebody could read that bubble, as my daughter says to me, well, I'm going to do this at this moment. You're okay with that, right? And I want to say, are you kidding me? No, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with your cats running in my bedroom, as she stays in our house. I'm not okay with it, but I have that filter that says, okay, fine, not the way you would do things, but don't let it go from your lung to your tongue and out of your mouth in that way. So again, as Pat talked about, it's balance. We have to figure out the best way to live our life in balance, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be having just pure, wonderful thoughts all the time. That's not the case. It absolutely is not. So that took me out of not liking myself, because at times that happens. And I don't know if it happens to you, but I love when the heads shake yes, because it's, I can't just, not just when you do mediumship and you want the heads to shake yes, but when you're doing the talks, that makes you know that people understand what you're saying and go through the same thing. And you know what? It's important for us to know we're not alone in these feelings of self-doubt, and sometimes, I don't want to say it, I am going to say it, is hatred. Sometimes you do something and you go, I really hate myself for that. That wasn't the best way I could have done this. But this is life. This is being human. So the thing to know is that, just like Gabby says in her talks, is that it's not about if you slide back. It's not about if you're not the purest on the most spiritual path all the time. It's about how fast you can get back there. And excuse me, you're never getting back to perfection, because there is no perfection. It's about knowing that maybe you could do better. Maybe we could all do better. So I started to think about the fact of what spiritualism really means to me. And I think spiritualism has become a friend. It has become a relationship. Just like we talk about having a relationship with God, and I'm not from a Christian background. I am from a Jewish background, but I have to say my background is so far from that, because it's not where my parents, surrounded us with our faith. They surrounded us with love, and they surrounded us with what we needed to become good adults and loving people. But I think spirituality, like our belief in God, is a relationship. It is a friendship. And knowing that, am I always in my best self with my friends? No, I'm not. I'm not always in my best self with any of my relationships, but I know that I'll always be accepted back in. And that's how I'm thinking of my spirituality now, is I may pray from you. I may not call you up as often as I should, but you're always going to accept me back in, and there's always going to be space for you in my heart. So this is where, to me, spirituality, our spiritual path, our journey, whatever you want to call it, is a friendship. It's a relationship. And in that, there's good times, there's bad times, there's times where you just go, okay, I need space. But you always can come back to it. And that's, I guess, if I was in an organized religion, that would be probably how most people feel about organized religions. I don't know, because I really have not, had that in my life in a big way, that you're with it, you're away from it, but you can come back to it. But that is a relationship, and it is a friendship. So I wanted to bring that to you, that at times when I've fallen away from the person that I want to be, or the way that I have seen things or understood things, I use the terminology. I don't even think Ken knows this. It's so rare that he doesn't know everything about me, but I don't even think he knows this, that I use the term to myself, just getting back on duty. Because what that means to me, and I heard it in a movie years ago where a young man kind of went away from the focus of what he was supposed to be doing, what his responsibilities were. And finally, he said, I'm just getting back on duty. And that's how I feel about sometimes when we stray from being the most spiritual human being we can, or the best example of what we would want to be is that, okay, we've strayed. We're not as nice as maybe we would like to be at this moment, but we're just getting back on duty, which would kind of make what Gabby has said very true. How fast you can get back to what you need to be, or what you want to be, or what you feel you should be in your heart. So that was important for me to grab a phrase, because there are some times where it's like I'm kicking myself. If I could honestly raise my foot back here, I'd be kicking myself in the butt sometimes for the things that I have felt, not even said, but felt, that I'm like, what good is this doing? What is this doing to you other than bringing you down? The other person is not suffering from this. You are. And my mother always used to say that to me, you know, forgiveness, because we've talked about forgiveness. Forgiveness really is more about how you feel and how you recover than the other person. Because unless you've expressed all of what you don't like that's going on with them, they don't know. So the forgiveness is about yourself. It's about getting yourself into a better place. So in saying that, this is kind of interesting, and I will turn to you for the song afterwards. I had thought about a song from years ago because it came again on the radio again. I guess it was kind of like an advertisement for it, but it was about, gosh, I can't even remember, 20 years ago, whatever the case may be, where I had gone to see the show Wicked. And if any of you, and I think, and it's about Elzabeth, right, and Linda, and the two differences in their personality. But, you know, for our purposes, we can think of them as one person. We can think of them as the Linda, who is the very, you know, life is beautiful kind of thing and happy, and she's going to bring you the brighter side of life. And we can think of Elzabeth, who had a very difficult life that nobody really knew about, you know, and her existence was different. I don't want to go into the whole thing, but that she was more the negative side of things. But if you look at it as being us, we have both sides. We are both of those things. We are the very positive, we are the very, very negative. And we are somewhere in between a lot of the times, hopefully more of the time. But it becomes where in this song, which Leslie's going to play for you, it's about relationship, it's about friendship, it's about balance, and it's about spirituality. And I'm hoping when you listen to it, it's a beautiful song that you'll see that in there. You know, I mean, you're going to hear them talk individually in it, and then they come together. But to me, that song was like seeing both sides of who we are and recognizing what comes from that is the best in all of us, the good. And the relationship with spirituality is about that. It's about finding the best. It's about having made good changes and finding the good. I saw this show, and like I said, I don't exactly know how many years ago. It was with my friend Adriana and my daughter, and Adriana and I just sat there and cried through this song from the moment that the song began till the end. And my daughter just looked over at her. She was in her 20s at the time, and thought, she kept saying, "What is wrong? What is wrong with the two of you?" But Adriana and I realized at the time, it wasn't only about the friendship that we had forged between the two of us, which was incredible, really was, and I miss her each and every day. And she is still on this earth, so I don't think it seems like she's passed. She is not, she's just in a different location. But what I found through that is we realized, Adriana and I had met in a spiritual church, and we realized that we were on our spiritual journey together. And it didn't mean that every aspect of our friendship or every aspect of that journey through spiritualism was perfect. It wasn't. It wasn't perfect at all, but it was something we were doing together. And that's what I feel is important when you listen to this. One of the very last lines, when she keeps saying, well, they keep saying, I don't know if I've been changed for the better, but I've been changed for good. And what they're saying is that there is change, you know, forever there was change. but it's also at the end, the last sentence is, but I have been changed for the better. And so that's what I wanted to leave with you at this point, is that on my spiritual, journey, can't speak for yours, there have been changes, and they have been for the good, meaning I will always come back to my spirituality, and they have been for the better. Even when I don't think I'm always doing better, we are, because we've taken those steps to understand ourselves more. And that's growth. And whenever there's growth, that's the most important thing that you can give yourself. So thank you very much for listening today. And I hope that song didn't take you far away from what I was trying to say, but made you understand the both sides of the personality. So thank you. Thanks very much.